So Hoyo just released another teaser, and this time it's about Krai, and they just had to post it on a Tuesday in the middle of the day. And not only that, they also updated the Welkin Moon page, so I don't really know what I'm supposed to do anymore. Also, am I the only one getting Bloodborne vibes from this video? Like, come on, look at this. Isn't that just the same as the Moon Presence intro? But there is a lot of lore here and even more theory to cover. So, from Columbina as the last Moon Sister and the new Blood Moon, Nicole as the Dawn Maiden and the Traitor Angel, Alice as the Voyager or Instigator of Change, Sandrone as Mary Ann and Alain Guillotin, and the all-out Battle Royale coming to Krai. Here's everything we know about the Welkin Moon teaser, Moonlit Ballad of the Night. This will include every other detail I can find about the characters as well in one explosive lore drop of a video, so let's get started. The entire teaser and narration is about the moon, or rather, Columbina's past and her lonely journey of keeping the legacy of the Moon Sisters alive. She is the last guardian of a fading world, the Moon Maiden, so through her quiet rituals and presence in the teaser ever guarding the dying Frost Moon, she preserves the memory and spirit of a lost homeland, the ancient unified civilization where both Seelies and Moon Sisters and the primordial one lived in harmony, along with humans. Her mission is solemn and ongoing, which is to keep desolation and oblivion at bay, even if no one else remembers. Columbina, known as the Moon Maiden, is the last surviving echo of the three Moon Sisters, with the other two moons having sacrificed themselves, very likely to halt the abyss from entering the world. Columbina now wanders the world alone, not in power but in remembrance. She scatters dewdrops, sings nameless tunes, and walks forgotten palaces. This is her, reflecting and reminiscing the past she lives, the ancient unified civilization. Small acts meant to keep the legacy of the Moon Sisters alive in her mind for thousands of years. The world may have forgotten their story, but a select few still remember. In essence, the Moon Maiden is grief made gentle, a guardian of lost things. Her role is vital. If she disappears, so too does the Sky Dome and the legacy of the moons, and especially the Frost Moon itself. Columbina uses her powers and alters the moon that turns flowers red, as well as the silver Frost Moon into a red Blood Moon. She also says that in the water, the future mirrors the past. She's basically saying that past events will happen again in the near future, and since we're following the Welkin Moon, that means that the last moon is going to die in Krai, as well as a new moon being created. But let's talk about triple goddesses and why Columbina might be all three Moon Sisters into one single maiden. In Greek mythology, Artemis is associated with the waxing crescent and waxing gibbous phase of the moon, and is also the goddess of the hunt. But several Japanese tales feature moon maidens, such as the Moon Maiden where a fairy descends from the moon to bless a couple, which actually happened to the first Seelie, which we'll talk about later. In Neo-paganism, the Moon Maidens represent the maiden aspect of a triple goddess, symbolizing new beginnings, youth, and potential. But many mythologies believe that the triple goddess was a single entity represented in a triple form. These triple goddesses were also copies of the same in different ages: a young girl, a grown-up, and a widow or a crone. This might mean that the three Moon Sisters were manifestations or physical forms of a single moon goddess, which means that there is only one moon goddess divided into three sisters. Columbina might be an aspect of a single moon or all three moons inside of one being. Her clothes suggest that she's a manifestation of all three while also being shown as the youngest crescent moon. She has the same color scheme of the three moons in the teaser, and she wears all three. Since she is called the Maiden, this also means that she is the youngest moon, meaning the Frost Moon, maybe a new Frost Moon. But following the triple goddess narrative, Moonlit Bamboo Forest, Columbina might be the youngest moon and the last moon still present in Teyvat, who gave up her station as Moon Sister to roam the land as just Columbina. And now she has to come back to Krai. Apart from the past happening again, she also says that the Veil of Lies is slipping, which means that the fake Sky Dome is falling. Time is short and the moon's fall is nigh, meaning that the last remaining Frost Moon is actually dying, which keeps the fake Sky Dome up. So someone must save or replace the Frost Moon, and the Fatui are going to use Columbina to replace Columbina. But Columbina is also a harbinger who has to follow orders, which means that she might have left Snezhnaya and went to Krai to watch and help the Frost Moon. This might be an act against the Pale Star Edict, and now they need to retrieve Columbina, who seems to be within the territory of the Frost Moon Scions, or somewhere within Krai close to the moon. It's worth noting that the Fatui's mission is to retrieve Columbina and not rescue her. There's a different sense of urgency and importance between the two, and Columbina is just another piece of the game against the Divines. She will replace the Frost Moon, but she is also the key to taking over the fake sky, which is the Fatui and the Saritsa's plan to kill the Heavenly Principles. Columbina is also seen turning the flowers red, which also turns the Frost Moon red. This means that the new moon will become a red blood moon, but this would also mean a death ritual for the moons, where the moon starts from pale white to crimson red and then black. This reflects the history of Conria's dynasties as well as the book Perrin Harry. And if I were to be a bit wilder, Renova would also have a hand in this since she's the god of death. And for a divine entity like a moon sister to properly die, it would require a proper death ritual, because if not, well, we all know what god remains are made of. The narrator of this entire teaser, Nicole Reeyn, recounts the intriguing history of the unified civilization, a pivotal era following the Primordial One's victory over the Dragon Sovereigns. This age, predating the modern nations today, was deeply characterized by its connection to Phanes, the Primordial One, and the unique use of Enkanomiya-style architecture. Notably, this civilization thrived before the creation of Tevat's false sky. Now, if you've encountered terms like the Moon Sister era, the Seelie era, or the Primordial One era, then this unified civilization encapsulates all these periods, weaving their events closely together when they fell. This era emerged after the Primordial One defeated the dragons, subsequently birthing human life in Tevat, transforming the dragons' original light, known as phlogiston, into 7 elemental hues we recognize today. At that time, there was no boundary separating life and death, implying an immortal or blurred existence where only beings such as the Primordial One, the Shades, and the Moons were present. An era of ethereals, which, if you know about Fontaine's root cycles and races, is the first era of creation. There were no living things, only ethereal entities that divided itself into many forms as the world was being created. Humans and animals had yet to exist, and the world itself was still undergoing a profound transformation guided by the heavenly principles. The Primordial One notably created 3 moons from the Earth, identified in the teaser as the Eternal, the Incandescent, and the Frost Moon. During this era, willpower flowed freely across the land, enabling divine beings like angels and gods to teach humans sacred knowledge, such as the skill books familiar to adventurers today. A significant point arrived during the funerary year, referenced explicitly in Before the Sun and Moon, linked closely to Enkanomiya, an area beneath Inazuma. So Nicole knows about the funerary year and the book Before the Sun and Moon, as well as the history of all of Tevat. So that in itself is enough to explain where she came from, but we'll talk about her later. During this year, a mysterious voice referred to as the Primordial Voice echoed in the darkness, coinciding with the arrival of the second throne of the heavens and restarting a catastrophic war similar to the world's initial creation. This battle likely marked the first awakening of the heavenly principles in their slumber after creating the world, prompting a cataclysmic event where the heavens collapsed and the earth was rent asunder, sinking the ancestral lands of Enkanomians near the ominous Dark Sea. Thus begins the Era of Darkness, defined by an ancient threat emerging from beyond the moon's reach, which is basically the abyss lurking outside of the artificial dome that feasts on stars and now waiting to unleash its deadly claws on Tevat right as the fake sky dome and the frost moon is starting to fall. After this second war, the Primordial One had all of its functions taken, which basically means that it can't do much after the war, and had to resort to creating what's known as the Era of the Seven, leaving the humans with archons and visions to feed and keep the world from falling apart, while the Heavenly Principles goes to sleep, likely to recuperate its strength. The Shades now left with upholding what is called the Heavenly Principles, but now the moon is dying and humanity wants to forge their own fate, which leads us to today. Moving on, Nicole Reeyn sprouts wings similar to the headpiece of Columbina, but she also has an angelic halo tiara that floats whenever she activates her powers. Her design and motifs are also reminiscent of the Shades without being a proper Shade herself, which means that she's either a moon sister or what I've been wishing for her to be, an angel. We already assumed that she was a Seelie or an angel based on the story of Wolfie and the Imaginarium Theater, and she even has some nice back tattoos if you're curious, but because this is Genshin Impact, Nicole wouldn't just be a normal Seelie. No. If we take into account all of the lore we know about the Seelies and her power to predict the future and see the past, then she has to be the first angel of Tevat, the Dawn Maiden, and the traitor angel who started a divine rebellion against the heavenly principles. Skirk's weapon lore describes a rebellion voiced by the First Angel, also known as the Dawn Maiden and traitorous envoy, who once faithfully upheld the oppressive laws of the primordial master. Her transformation begins when bathed in starlight atop a sacred mountain, which we might now know as Hiseki Island, and that really tall monument on a mountain. She glimpses the forbidden truths and feels love stir in her heart, which is a poetic term for desire, igniting a calling to speak of a new dawn, a new era. In her revelation, she mentions 4 specific figures, which are also Silis: Yoel Tekotin becoming Lord of the Night, Nabu Malikata turning into a martyr of Sumeru, Cibola the Golden Bee Prophet of Remuria, and the poetic golden-eyed Celadon Mare, who also knows of the fall of the Moon Sisters story. Each of them represents the Sealy's suppressed potential and fractured legacy, and all 4 of these events happened in truth. So the Dawn Maiden predicted this fate of her people, but she also saw hope in humanity who would then come to start a new era. In the end of her narrative, the First Angel prophesies a reckoning. The ruler who denies love will be shaken, the veil will be torn, and a new day will dawn. Not ordained by divine decree, but seized by those willing to feel, love, and live, and have desire, which is the very essence of humanity. This is exactly what is happening to Nodecry right now, which means that Nodecry will not only be where the last moon will fall and the fake sky will be broken, but the heavenly principles will awaken. Scared by the thought of death and desire, and a revolutionary new era will start at the hands of all factions within Nodecry, where mortals will kill the heavenly principles, and the new day will dawn as the era of humans. Now, if you started from Mondstadt all the way to here, the era of humans has been something that already started since the current era of the Seven. The first Pyro Archon was already the catalyst for humans to rule their fate, which was thousands of years ago from Xbalanque, and Mondstadt came in right after, which is also why Venti and Mawika are drinking buddies in the manga, since they value humans more than control them as divines. And the rest happens for all other regions as Archon quests, where humans decide their own fate. Nicole being on the Hiseki monument would also mean that the Frost Moon is floating right above that monument, which is probably why we never see whatever is above it in the teasers. So the moon rises and falls on that monument, and every faction wants a piece of that mooncake. Now, before we talk about every character in the teaser, there's 2 translatable scripts that drop quite big lore bombs. One is the tombstone where Flins purge the undead, and the other is a letter written to Alice, who we can assume is Nicole or someone from the Abyss based on its contents. And oh boy, it took me 2 hours just to translate and confirm with good old Twitter and Reddit sources. Now, Alice's letter is written in Abyss text, and it reads as follows: Aralos, Solnari, and Canon. Since we're going to Nodecry because of the moon dying, the letter depicts the name of the 3 moon sisters, Arya, Sonnet, and Canon. Canon and Canon are direct names, which means that someone who can write in Abyss language found the location of Columbina, the Moon Maiden, or that it's a signal to commence operations on the Moon Sisters itself. But Aralos and Solnari are changed by a bit, and one of them is even named after a sinner. Solnari might just be a poetic code name that the Hexen Circles made for Sonnet, but sonare is the closest Latin word which is to make sound. Aralos is an invented name. It's likely a sun-coded version for Arya. Ara means altar or the constellation, and Los means sun in several languages, so Aralos could mean a sun altar, a code name for a solar counterpart of the moon, and is naming the Moon Sisters after solar phases instead of moon phases. If you can remember, the Morning Star was the lover of the Moon Sisters, which is the sun. So these might just be names for solar brothers, which reflect their partners, the Moon Sisters. And now that we know that the triple goddess is just one moon goddess made into 3, then there is also one sun god, just split into 3 physical entities. Next, Reeyn, the Rakir of Solnari, is also a point of discussion since he might appear in Nodecry. Rakir of Solnari comes from Sol and Nari, meaning sun corpse. So Reeyn is the avenger of dead suns, of which the only thing closest to a sun that died in Genshin is Nibelung, the dragon who shined as bright as a sun. So not only will a new moon appear in Nodecry, but probably a new real sun as well. Next is Flynn's tombstone, which means in sacred tribute to Chudomir the Arnivalki. Also, Flynn's full name is Kirill Chudomirovich Flyns. First off, Arnivalkia in Finnic mythology is a will-o-wisp that burns over a hidden treasure. Will-o-wisps are ghost lights said to misguide travelers by resembling a flickering lamp or lantern, which is exactly what Flynn does. They're also called foolish flames or ignis fatuus. So this must be Flynn's father since Chudomir is in his father's name, and Chudomir might have done something to give the title the Foolish Flame. While the people in Nodcry, the Lightkeeper specifically, follow a Finnic mythology of the flickering flames to lure and combat darkness, which matches their lighthouses, which are actually really tall lanterns. But considering the context of Lightkeepers luring monsters into them, Flins might be the only fully trained and living Lightkeeper left. Everyone else, we can only assume, is part of the graveyard that Flins is watching over. Even worse is that you can see a tower of the Lightkeepers that's gone out. Flins also looks like he hasn't gotten any sleep at all, which only means that he's been up defending Nodcry for who knows how long. So pray for Flins, guys. He's the only other tall male character that we're getting, and we do not want him to die. Kirill Chudomirovich Flins is an interesting character that is the polar opposite of Hu Tao when it comes to tending to the dead. But they both have similar upbringings in that their elders were what led them to becoming what they are. Every character in the game who originates from Nodcry will likely have some form of lunar power, so as a Lightkeeper and someone who purges the dead with fire mixed with electricity, this means a change in the overload reaction and meta. Flins will have a fire and lightning-ish like power to purge the dead, but his powers as a Lightkeeper is quite similar to how exorcists in Liyue exorcise ghosts and the dead. This would shed some light on the powers of exorcism as something akin to Lightkeeper's powers. Alice and the Hexen Circle have already been to Nodcry. She said that things look even messier than last time. So what would they have done long ago that made a mess in Nodcry? Or rather, what sort of mess in Nodcry would have happened before? I think it might be related to the fall of the moons and the rebellion of the Seelies. The fall of the Seelie and the Moon Sisters were related to the Second Heavenly War and when the Second Throne of the Heavens came. This not only means that Alice and some of the Hexen Circle are as old as the Shades and the Principals, but they might also have done something related to the fall of that era. If I were to make a wild guess, Alice herself might have been the Voyager who convinced the first angel to rebel against the Heavenly Principles. The reason being, Alice has already gone to multiple worlds, and the Voyager has seen many worlds fall. So Alice might be traveling from world to world, gathering trinkets and knowledge before those worlds fell to the abyss. Alice also came here to meet an old friend, which means Varka or Nicole, who are both in Nodcry. Another interesting detail is that throughout the entire teaser, the moon starts from very close to Tevat and then it gets much farther. So the moon seems to come close to Tevat as the Scions do their ritual and the moon goes back up after. That or the Shades are doing some crazy level tampering with the world, which is possible that the Shades will also be in Nodcry since Renova decided to intervene with either the Traveler or the Fatui's plan to kill the Principals. So we will meet Reindaughter and know more about Durin, Albedo, and the Sinner lore in future patches. And not to mention Istaroth's weird time shenanigans. Lauma and the Frost Moon Scions are called the Forsaken and Forgotten, who are moon worshippers from the era when the moons were still present. Lauma has silver blood as a scion of the Frost Moon, which means that she and her people are descendants of the Frost Moon. She also says that she's from Hyperborea, meaning that the Scions were once part of that kingdom. If you didn't know, Hyperborea is an ancient civilization mentioned in the finale of the Deep Galleries artifact set, which is where Snezhnaya is located today. This kingdom was responsible for the second half of the fall of the Seelie by taking bones of fairies and making their own forms of life, which are likely the Scions and the Snowland Fae who became royals of Hyperborea. Hyperborea was also a root cycle in the world and knowledge cycles of Tevat. What this means in simpler terms is that Snezhnaya was once where the origins of the first civilizations were. And if we follow the theory of root cycles and root races in theosophy, a new root cycle will emerge bearing the knowledge of all other cycles with them. Think of it as a new world order and we the travelers are gonna be the one to carry that. Now that new cycle is going to happen once the Fatui theoretically kill the Heavenly Principles and create an era where humans rule the world and not the gods. So what do you get when you mix Wriothesley, Gepard, and Aventurine? You get the Varka, and weirdly enough, he's also Anemo. Varka's character model is extremely muscular and is wearing the same outfit as Albedo. Hopefully we'll be getting some proper JoJo character models in Nodcry. Also, Varka having an Anemo vision fits perfectly as the real Grandmaster of the Favonius. But it's also worth noting that Varka brought 80% of the Favonius military forces along with him to Nodcry as a leading expeditionary force, which includes Jean and Barbara's parents, Seamus Pegg, the Cardinal of Daybreak and Steward of the Favonius Church, as well as Frederica Gunhilder, the Alder Knight and second in command of Varka's expedition. Safe to say we'll see quite a battle royale in Node Cry between all of the factions involved, especially after seeing Varka. Durin, who is Pyro, also came to Node Cry in his now human form with the same color as the dragon Durin's sword. Now Durin is also likely going to meet his master Reeyn daughter, since the Hexen Circle is one of the factions who wants something from the Frost Moon, and he also likely came with Albedo and Alice. Durin has a crimson heart, which might be the new core taken from the real Durin, now mixed with Simulanka Durin. Both Durins are in one person, but it seems like human Durin carries possible memories related to the real dragon Durin. There's gonna be a lot of Durins here, okay? Now this means Durin now knows the histories of the real Durin in Conria, and how he was actually created, as well as what purpose Reeyn daughter had for him. The Dragon Spine weapons also tell of the story of Dragon Durin who attacked Mondstadt while asleep and woke up after being put down by the Volin and Venti during the Cataclysm. So we'll know more about that story and the details of why he was put to sleep and what exactly was the real plan for Reeyn daughter during that time. Next, one of my favorite characters of the day, Sandrone, and her plans with Dottore from 5.8 and now in 6.0 Node Cry has always been to claim or pull the moon from the sky. And I hazard a guess that in 5.8 we'll know about what they've done in Node Cry through Inefa, which means that this event here is the same time before Node Cry was attacked, and Inefa was sent to Natlan and come find us. Which then connects to what Inefa saw in Node Cry in her teaser, the ancient moon fragments falling into Node Cry. It's the only way to make sense of Inefa's backstory and her arrival in Natlan, as well as why she's in Node Cry today. The plans to retrieve Columbina in Node Cry would currently be happening right now too. So once we get to Node Cry, all of these characters in this teaser would have already been doing what they planned with the moon, which includes Varka's expedition in full force, Alice, Albedo, and Durin's arrival, Columbina's retrieval and her turning the moon red, the ritual of Lauma, and even Finn's lonely Lightkeeper watch. So expect Node Cry to not look peaceful as you see in this teaser. Next, Sandrone's splash art shows her as an actual mechanical puppet. This is huge and very terrifying. Specifically, and more terrifyingly, designed like a mecha from Fontaine, which pushes us closer to the darker theorized origins of Mary Ann Guillotin. Mary Ann Guillotin was an agent of the Marechaussee Phantom and a former member of the Narcissus-Kreutz Institute during the Cataclysm era of Fontaine. After dying in battle, her consciousness merged with the Oceanid Lyris, giving rise to the hybrid Oceanid Mary Ann, who later created the Dreamborn Oceanid Anne. Now here's where it gets really creepy. Alain Guillotin is Mary Ann's sister, a genius who founded the Research Institute of Fontaine and created the Coppelius boss, as well as many other mecha. The thing is, he secluded himself after reaching old age and after Mary Ann died, but he was also said to be conducting secret research in his workshop. And while none of his research was publicly documented, within his workshop were signs that something was built. And that something, I think, is Sandrone, a mecha, specifically a puppet with a huge wind-up knob behind her, similar to the Coppelius and Coppelia bosses that look almost 99.99% sure like Mary Ann, which not only supports that Alain Guillotin created a puppet version of Mary Ann into Sandrone, who became a harbinger in Snezhnaya, but Alain Guillotin himself could have also be still alive and is the robot holding Sandrone in its hand. So Mary Ann and Alain Guillotin are alive, and I don't know if they're breathing and well, but they're there, and that's them. Nefer comes from an Egyptian hieroglyph which means beauty, but her real origins might come from the Egyptian queen Nefertiti. She's one of the most influential queens of Egypt and was a key figure in promoting the worship of the sun god Aten, which is similar to the new dawn that the Dawn Maiden is trying to start, theorized to be Nicole Reeyn. So Nefer's scene and lore about stories being related to Nicole is more than just a coincidence. She may be in Node Cry right now, but she might have origins in Sumeru. I mean, just look at her, she looks like Anka. Since Node Cry is the melting point of all regions, we can expect designs and color schemes from all other 7 regions mishmashed into one single city-state. Now, Nefer might look like just another historian, but in Node Cry, knowledge isn't just power, and in Node Cry, memory is a weapon. Just like Nicole's storytelling as she approaches the Hiseki monument. Now I'm putting Aino and Jahoda in one segment because I can't really find anything else about them that's worth a full segment. But they are the cute characters of this game, so hey. Anyway, we already know that Aino is Inefa's creator, but you might notice that she has ghost sleeves which might be related to her powers once she becomes playable. This point in time is also when Inefa and Aino were still together, so the scenes from Inefa's visions haven't happened yet. Meanwhile, Jahoda is a strawberry, but Jahoda might actually be a robot like Inefa, or a cyborg with mechanical limbs and possible magnetic compass-related abilities. Her design also has a lot of plus and minus signs which might indicate a positive, negative electric current type of playstyle in her kit. She also could be a living electric compass that uses Node Krai's lunar power as a magnetic field. And there we go, everything we know about the Node Krai teaser. There's way too much lore dropping right now with the release of these quote-unquote teasers. Are these even teasers at this point? But honestly, I am both glad and happy, I guess, or angry that these teasers are coming out. Because one, we get to see more lore from world quests going to Archon quests, which is great. But also because I can't push my friggin' Star Rail video. Anyway, since you have watched all the way to this point, why not press that little like button and maybe comment on how this video doesn't make sense or that if I'm reading into it too much, which I always like to do. If you enjoy this video, be sure to hit that subscribe and hit the bell icon too for more ramblings like these. Hopefully I can get that HSR video out already, but that's gonna be it for this video. So I'll see you guys in the next one, and as always, stay mad, theorists. Bye!